Welcome to the Shield database. Please enter your access code. Welcome. Agent Bullseye has proven time and time again that he is one of the most unhinged and dangerous enemies Daredevil has ever had to face. His ruthless efficiency, talent for killing, unclear mental illness all come together to make him the world's deadliest assassin. It would be easy for the writers of Daredevil to look at a character like this and make him a two-dimensional monster, and that is the mask he seems to intentionally wear throughout his supervillain career. However, over his 40-plus year history within Marvel Comics, we have seen a number of stories which show there is more to the character. That being said, however, it is equally common for the comics to show him as nothing more than an unstoppable force of nature, and these depictions can be equally unsettling. Regardless of which version of Bullseye a writer chooses to work with, however, the stories are always enthralling and have the reader on the edge of their seat. Here are 10 of the best. Spoilers ahead. Perfect Game is a two-part mini-series which details a one-year period in which Bullseye was missing in action. The story reveals that the assassin had become disenchanted with the life of a supervillain and instead enters the world of baseball, working his way up through the ranks, hoping to be known as the greatest pitcher of all time. The story is related by a man who has been seemingly rightly suspicious of a new ball player, and the entire two-issue story consists of this man's monologue as he explains why it is he believes one of the greatest pitchers of all time to secretly be a supervillain. This storytelling technique proves to be both a blessing and a curse, as it provides us with a small intimate story, but also means that while there is a lot of talking about Bullseye here, he makes very few appearances and gives us even less action. Bullseye's very first appearance shows his ruthlessness and abilities already firmly established by the time he shows up. His introduction to the reader sees him send a paper airplane through the window of a man with a threat written on it. The letter demands the man pay him $100,000 or else he will be killed. However, before the man has even finished reading, Bullseye enters and murders him for not paying. His insanity is hinted at here, however becomes more obvious soon after when he lures Daredevil into a circus so that he can defeat the hero in front of television cameras and the New York Police Department. In the following issue, Bullseye manages to defeat Daredevil but leaves before finishing the job. Having advertised his skills to the city, he believes that no one would dare refuse him the next time he demands money. Daredevil soon tracks him down and manages to defeat him in their second encounter, but the villain had already managed to make a name for himself. The Marvel Max imprint was a series of stories aimed solely at adults and as such lack the censorship common within the industry. Punisher Max was a series published under this imprint and showed more realistic characters and situations while also dealing with more mature subject matter. Bullseye appears in this series in issues 6 to 11 and depicts him as an obsessive assassin who will not attack his target without fully understanding them. In an effort to understand Frank Castle, Bullseye repeatedly kidnaps families, lives with them for a short time, and then arranges to have them killed before his eyes. However, his deranged mental state prevents him from experiencing the anguish that befell Frank, and as a result he is not able to truly understand him. During a battle with Frank, Bullseye ends up in a coma due to interference from the Kingpin and is soon found in his hospital bed and killed by the Punisher, who becomes disturbed by the fact that despite being in a coma, the assassin died smiling. Bullseye Greatest Hits is a 5-part mini-series in which Bullseye relates his history to 2 NSA agents. Bullseye acts as an unreliable narrator throughout, and the reader is left wondering what was true and what was not. Bullseye relates his father's abuse, which came to an end when the young Bullseye tried to kill him in a house fire. He relates his career as a professional pitcher, which came to an abrupt end when he killed a batter with a baseball. He relates his first encounter with the Punisher in Nicaragua, in which he manages to throw a toothpick into the pinhole of a live grenade, and finally he relates some of the early Daredevil stories from his point of view. It is then revealed that Bullseye has been toying with the agents and spits a dislodged tooth through the skull of one of them whilst making an escape. It is then revealed that his father is being held in the same facility and Bullseye was willingly brought in order to get access to his old man and finish the job. Bullseye and Deadpool have long been depicted as good friends whose shared twisted senses of humor often lead to them trying to murder each other. This is best seen in an arc within the Deadpool ongoing series, which sees Bullseye gain the upper hand and shoot an arrow through Deadpool's head. The villain, however, is so conflicted about how to proceed that he phones up a radio show for advice. He eventually lets Deadpool wander off in a zombie-like state, rather than killing him. Deadpool eventually removes the arrow and dons a suit of meat to stop Bullseye's projectiles from slowing him down. This advantage allows Deadpool to get close enough to Bullseye to again impale him. It is made very clear in this arc that the two greatly enjoy fighting each other, and because of this Deadpool reciprocates Bullseye's earlier kindness and doesn't kill him despite having the chance, but instead sends him to a hospital and leaves flowers by his bed. When Bullseye heals, the fight continues and eventually Bullseye pays off Deadpool and the two briefly look back fondly at some of the funnier moments of the battle and share a laugh. Mark Waid's run sets up an entirely new dimension to the villain, who at this point was well established as one of the most threatening non-powered individuals in the entire Marvel Universe. After being killed during the events of Shadowland, Bullseye was revived by the Hand but was essentially trapped in a paralyzed body. Without the ability to physically attack his enemies, Bullseye becomes a much more calculating and psychological menace. When he is eventually reintroduced, it is revealed that everything which had happened to Daredevil over the last couple of years were a part of his plan to mentally unravel the hero to make him easy pickings for his ally Ikari, who Bullseye was personally responsible for creating. While the villain would soon after return to his bombastic self, this arc let readers know that even without his abilities, Bullseye is still one of the most dangerous foes Daredevil will ever face. Roulette manages to simultaneously feature Bullseye throughout while not really featuring him at all. It tells us a great deal about him without him ever doing or saying anything. The story is set some time after Bullseye murdered Elektra and was paralyzed by Daredevil. It is set entirely in his hospital room without the villain being able to move or speak, and instead focuses on a seemingly unhinged Daredevil who comes to play a game of Russian roulette with his unwilling foe. This murderous attitude from the usually heroic Daredevil shows the reader how much Bullseye has impacted the man without fear, and how even the most righteous of us can be pushed towards the dark side when worn down by sufficient evil. Bullseye is that evil here, and despite his inaction, he is able to show us his depravity through the effect he has on those around him. During the events of Dark Reign, Bullseye was given the moniker of Hawkeye and recruited to Norman Osborn's Avengers, a group of villains disguised as heroes. Bullseye spends much of this story trying to hide his murderous excesses from the public as well as his new boss, while also trying to hold his grip of reality as his mental state seemingly begins to further deteriorate. The story attempts to evaluate the way we idolize people we have deemed heroes, while also giving us one of the most insightful looks yet into the mind of the world's deadliest assassin. All of this eventually comes crashing to a head with the return of Bullseye's believed to be dead father, who is naturally looking for revenge. This series manages to dive deep into Bullseye's psychology but is mainly focused on non-stop action. Any reader who just likes to see Bullseye building up his body count should pick up this series. This story gave us the first inklings of how much potential for darkness there was in this character. It follows Bullseye, who has escaped from prison one day before he was due to undergo a surgery to remove a brain tumor. The tumor and Bullseye's obsession with Daredevil, however, proved to be a dangerous combination for the people of New York, as the world's deadliest assassin soon begins to experience periods of time in which he believes everyone he sees to be the man without fear, and naturally the results are horrific. As Bullseye goes on a killing spree, it becomes the real Daredevil's job to track him down and apprehend him. The hero is eventually able to do this, but later wonders whether or not it was right to save a man who will likely go on to murder others. The issue ends with a conflicted Daredevil hearing the doctors make the chilling announcement that Bullseye's operation was a success and he will make a complete recovery. Last Hand is a story within the revered Elektra saga and is arguably the story arc that brought Bullseye up into the A-list. It is here that we finally understand just how big a threat he is, just how dangerous he is, and just how much damage he can do to Matt Murdock. The story establishes Elektra as the new chief assassin of the Kingpin, much to Bullseye's dismay, who sets out to kill her and prove himself her better. Typically, stories like these would end with the villain being defeated by the heroine or the damsel being saved by an intervening hero, but that was not the case here. Bullseye managed to impale Elektra on one of her own and she managed to crawl to Matt Murdock's apartment before dying in his arms. Matt would go on to battle Bullseye and drops him several stories, possibly the single most malicious act of Matt's life, showing us once again the darkness that Bullseye can bring about in the man without fear.